All right, everyone can hear me good?
Yes.
Awesome, great. So again, this is going to be our last day of full instruction. So yesterday, John went over how to create a Django API backend, and you should have all managed to deploy it to Heroku. So now we're going to make a React front end that gets all of its information from that backend. So by the time this is over, you will have a fully functional Heroku, fully functional application with a front end and a back end deployed to two different Heroku URLs. So I've already navigated into a folder for this. Now I'm going to create a React app. Create React app. Let's call it wine front end. Also, another thing we'll be doing during this, just to preview while we're watching this thing load, we're also going to be using another React Bootstrap library that we did different from React Strap, just called React Bootstrap. They both work. They both do more or less the same things. It's just a matter of preference. Just wanted to show you a bit of one, bit of the other.
No, I don't know if you experienced this yesterday. I was trying to use React Strap, and some of the components weren't rendering as desired. Like I tried to have like a little loading spinner load, but it wasn't actually doing the loading spinner. It was just saying like loading.
Huh.
I don't know
But like other React Strap components were loading?
I didn't check them, but
okay. I actually had that problem too yesterday, and
okay.
one thing what fixed it for me is I forgot to add. There's that line of needing the Bootstrap stuff you have to add to index.js.
Okay, yeah, that may have been it.
Yeah, that adds the actual CSS stuff.
Okay, yeah, because I also installed Bootstrap as an npm module, so yeah, I think I probably needed the link in the.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Kenneth. I swear it doesn't normally take this long. Well, as you can see, here's my Heroku backend I've created. So I've called it the very wieldy name of Noah Kila Platoon Wine API.herokuapp.com. But we've got wines, we can look at an individual wine. This should all be working out pretty well, hopefully. It's going very slowly, but it works. It seems like that seems to be a running theme today. Come on. From now on, I'm doing this as not part of the lecture. I'm just going to do it in front before I do anything else. Also, one thing to keep in mind about Heroku is free to use, and it's very reliable. Well, it's very easy to use. It's not very fast. And does it still do the thing where it just throttles sometimes it just shuts off your app for like a couple minutes a day? Is that still a thing it does?
I think so, because there's occasionally sometimes the apps I have deployed are down.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, also you can only deploy 5 apps to Heroku before you have to start paying for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's good for practice like this, but once you are in the wild making your own things, you may want to look into other hosting software. Okay. Great. Okay. Thanks for being patient right there. I'm going to CD into our project. I'm also, while I'm here, I'm going to do some more npm installing. That should not take that long. I'm going to npm install React Router DOM. Or maybe it will. I wonder if it's because I'm in the basement. I want to apologize for this. This is weird. Usually it is not this slow.
I assume they probably also give speed preferences to the paying customers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true.
For Heroku, yeah.
Yeah. Now Heroku is a lot faster and a lot more reliable if you decide to give them money. I'm also going to install React Bootstrap. So that's our thing that's like React Strap, but not. I think once this quarantine's over, I got to have like a big thing of just looking at my computer and finding out, okay, I need to update something because something's being a little slowing me down. Or a lot of things, it looks like. All right, one more thing. I'm going to install React Bootstrap Table. Oh my God.
I think there's also you also have to install React npm install Bootstrap, but that's in their documentation. That's what they say.
Well, I think for this one, I've managed to do this one before without that, so we'll see.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to do just one more, just regular npm install, and then we should be good to go. Can we cut all this in post? Is that a thing we can do?
I've edited it in post before.
Yeah, I might do that. Okay. Now we can actually get started. Thank you for your patience on that. All right, so here's our project. Here's our app.js. I'm going to get rid of all of the placeholder stuff they've given us. And I'm going to be changing this around a bit. So first off, I'm going to import a few things. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to import browser router and route from React Router DOM. And I'm going to set up a router, or a browser router in this case. inside this div, I'm going to have 2 routes. The first one is going to be our home page. We're going to give it a component that we'll call home page. The next one is going to be to an individual wine show page. So I'm going to go to /wine/wine ID. And the component for that is going to be our wine page. Now we don't actually have either of these, so I'm going to make a pages folder. And inside that pages folder, I'm going to make homepage.js and winepage.js. So for homepage, I'm going to import React from React. I'm going to make functional component in this case. And for now, it's just going to return a div, just so it has something there. Export default homepage. And I'm just going to copy this and do the same thing for wine page. Right. So with that all done, I should be able to npm start and see a very basic, essentially blank thing. Actually, I'm also going to add a header in here just so we know that something is there. All right, development server is starting up. Eventually. All right, while that's going on, I'm actually going to start making, oh, okay. Okay. So we have some problem. I didn't actually import either of these resources into my app.js. There's my home page, and if I go to /wine/1, I get my wine page. Great. So this is all new. This is nothing new. We've all done this before. Next thing I want to do is I actually want to make sure I have a means of interacting with my Heroku backend. So I'm going to make an API folder. And inside the folder, I'm going to make a file called wineapi.js. So what are the 2 basic getting functions we want to do for interacting with our API? What do we want to be able to do as users?
Say what data you want specifically?
Say that again, please.
To say what data you want specifically. So like, you want to grab the data or post it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we want to be able to get data and post it, but since this is our wine app that we made the other day, so what specifically are we trying to get from our backend? See something in the chat?
A list of all the wines?
We want a list of all the wines. That's one of them. So I'll call this fetch wines. And we're going to return fetch. And now I'm actually going to show you something right now before we even do that. I'm going to try to fetch from my console here. So I'm going to copy my URL. I'm going to fetch. So we get this error. Access to fetch at HTTP, no kilo Platoon, wine API, from origin localhost 3000 has been blocked by CORS policy. So we get so we don't even get a like a status code error. We cannot fetch. So this word keeps on showing up in this error, CORS. Has anyone heard that word before, CORS?
Yep.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yes. That's a big problem sometimes.
And what is CORS? What does it stand for?
Cross origin request something. Pretty much when you have different servers located at different ports, like they can't talk to each other if you're not allowing it explicitly.
Exactly. So we can visit our API directly through our browser because that's what it's designed to do. But making an API request from a origin that it doesn't recognize is going to give us this CORS issue, this policy that says that we can't just request an API from anywhere. We can only do it from trusted sources. So there's ways of fixing that, but before we do that, I'm just going to use another resource that may or may not work this time because yesterday I was having some problems with it. But there is a service called CORS Anywhere, which is also hosted on Heroku. And what you can do is you can make a request to corsanywhere.herokuapp.com/ and then the URL you want, and that should give you access, albeit very slowly. So I'm actually going to try this now on this fetch request, see if it'll allow us to do that. So I'm going to add in front of this https://corsanywhere.herokuapp.com/. All right, we get a promise. It's still pending, and it's resolved. So for now, this isn't a permanent solution, but for now, for testing purposes, it'll allow us to access our Heroku app enough to test it out. So I'm going to copy this whole long URL. And then I'm going to have a .then response, your response.json. All right. Any questions about that? About that CORS Anywhere thing? All right. So we fetched a list of all the wines. What's the other thing we'll be getting? Specifically, GET requests.
Actually, no, I did have a question about the CORS thing. Will you have to get rid of that later then? Or is that a permanent? That's not a permanent solution, right?
Yeah, that's not permanent. So what we're going to be doing later on is we're going to change our personal Heroku app to specifically allow this website, like this React page, once we've deployed this page to Heroku. So you can change your CORS policy to specifically allow certain websites to access it. And so once this is actually deployed on the web, then we can tell our Django app, okay, let this particular page access you. But for now, we use CORS Anywhere. All right, but again, so we have one thing that fetches all of the wines. What's the other thing we need to fetch? What page am I on right now?
Just a single wine and
Individual wine.
Yep, an individual wine. So we call it fetch wine by ID. Takes a wine ID as an argument. In this case, we'll be returning fetch. And we'll want to turn these into backticks so we can use some string interpolation. Whoops. So here I'm going to put wine ID. And then same thing we did there, response.json. All right, so now next step is I'm going to connect our homepage app to our Heroku backend using these wine API methods. So first off, I need to export defaults here. Can't forget that. So fetch wines and fetch wine by ID. Then import wine API from API/wineapi.js. I'm also going to make sure we can use state now. So I'm going to set up something called wines and set wines. And I'm going to set that equal to use state, empty array for now. All right, and then, so what I want to do now is I want to make sure that when this page is mounted, when it loads, that we run that fetch request. What's the hook we use to actually do that? Anyone remember?
Use effect.
Yeah, use effect. And how do we set that up?
Just the use effect, and then a callback function inside, and then a dependency in the array.
Yep, so use effect. What the actual hell? Sorry, one sec, someone's just buzzing me over and over again. They know I'm working. All right. All right, so we have our callback function here. And then I want to say something like set wines. I want to set that to something like wine API. Actually, we're going to want to call wine API first. Wine API dot fetch wines. And then we have then we can set up a dot then. Nope, and we'll call this JSON response. Then we want to set wines to JSON response. Uh-oh, use effect is not defined. Right, I need to actually import that. So if I go to my home page now, I should be able to see the state, use state, looking at my components. All right, if we look here, so state is set to, it looks like an object inside of which is a array. So maybe I want to be a little more explicit about this. I don't want just the JSON response. I want the array inside the JSON response. So I should be able to say set wines to JSON response dot wines. So, nope, we're getting some errors now. All right. So this is what I was talking about with Heroku stuff. Error 429, too many requests. Let's try refreshing.
I think that's because there's like 1,000 API requests being done because of the use effect right now. So we have to include the empty array after use effect. On line 9, I think.
So include the empty array. What do you mean exactly?
So that it only executes once and it doesn't re-execute because, I don't know, I think that's what we were doing with Tom last time. So between the curly brace and the parentheses, you have to do comma empty array.
Like that?
Yep.
All right, let's try that. Still getting the error.
Yeah, I think you're being throttled now, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think this happened to me yesterday as well with the use effect. We have to be careful with that because if we don't use it right, it keeps on making the request until until there's a maximum call stack
Right.
exceeds. And with Heroku, if you keep on making the requests, we just reached the maximum calls allowed on the API.
Mhm.
So we have to wait a while before we can make an API request to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, one thing we can do, at least for now, is we can refactor. So, hey, is there a way to stop it from doing that? Because I actually don't know.
I think that will work. However, to be safe, I just convert it to a class component and use component did mount because I know it just calls it once.
Yeah, I think I might do that. Well, lesson learned.
Yeah.
So converting this to a class component.
And then once we're able to make successful requests, then we can convert it back into a
Mhm.
functional component.
So we'll pretend this works. Gonna set this up to as component did mount. Then we'll say wine API fetch wines. Then we also need to set up state before we do anything else. Wines is an empty array. Then then JSON response. Then we'll call set state, or this dot set state. Wines is going to be JSON response dot wines. Then we need to wrap this in a render function. So we go back to this. Yeah, we've been throttled. I don't think we can make any more requests, which throws a monkey wrench in things, but that will work once we're allowed to. I don't know, does anybody feel like volunteering their API to use in the meantime? Nobody?
I'll give you mine.
Thank you. Yeah,
Uh,
put the URL in the chat.
yeah. Oh no! Hold on. Did I delete mine? Hold on. Crap. No, good. Here we go. I'm just pulling it up right now.
Mhm.
Where does it go? Where'd it go? Django. Oh, crap. Wine front end. Someone just post theirs. Oh man, Slack is going really slow.
Mhm.
Right,
Steven, that's your URL you said? Because that doesn't look like a URL to me.
It looks like a secret key.
Hey, Noah, I should have mine up. My Heroku.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Check Slack.
You didn't send me a URL though.
Oh,
So I just sent you the one to the all wines.
my bad. What a
All right, thanks, Tom.
Yep. Hopefully it works.
I accidentally hit Control C. All right, let's take a look. All right, you're not getting an error.
It's good.
All right, wines is blank at the moment. But we're not getting an error, so I'm going to call that a win for now. No, now it's undefined. Let's take a look at that API here. It's doing this.
Oh, the cores thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if cores is down.
Yeah.
Cores. Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a look at exactly what's actually happening there. So we can go to our home page and say, let's console.log the JSON response. Okay, okay, yours is just set up differently. Yours doesn't have .wines. Yours is just an array.
Oh.
I should just be able to do this. There we go. And if I go to components, there they are. Excellent. You even got timestamps. Very fancy.
Oh.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Nope, no problem.
All right. So we have all of her wines. So now I'm going to, under this, I'm going to change this one to all wines. And I'm going to render a component, which we haven't made yet, called wine list. And I'm going to pass in the wines we have as props to this one. This.state.wines as props to our wine list, which we now need to make. So I'm going to make a folder called components. Get a new file called wine list, or supposed to make a new folder for it. And inside of wine list, we'll make a new file called winelist.js. And let's make this one a class-based component too, just to be safe. And this is where I'm going to be using my Bootstrap stuff that I did. So Bootstrap table and table header column from React Bootstrap table. And call this one wine list. Have a render function, return a div just so we know something's going on. Oops. Forgot to put all this in parentheses. There we go. And then we need to export it and then import it in our home page. ./components/winelist/winelist.js. So it's compiling. All right, there we go. We've got a wine list component, and it's been passed wines as a prop. So now we can actually use Bootstrap table to render all of these wines in a more organized fashion. So to do that, I'm going to set up first the Bootstrap table component. and it's going to ask for data, and I'm going to pass in this.props.wines. Then I'm going to add some table header columns. The first one I'm going to set is key. I'm going to set a data field to equal the ID. I'm going to say ID is here. We have another table header column. This one, the data field is going to be name. Put name there. Should make sure that this is set up the way I think it is. So each one has, come back. Oh, well, it's already working, as we can see. So we have cab, Tempranillo, cab, Brunello. Not sure why it's not letting me look at the components though. So name, price, varietal, and description is what these all have. All right, I'm going to copy this. This one's going to be price. Varietal.
Hey Noah, is key and data field, are those both native to React Bootstrap?
Yeah, that's how the React Bootstrap does these things with its tables. So yeah, that is the official way they do it. Uh-oh. Cannot read property is key of undefined. What's undefined? The bootstrap table, line list line 8. Did I do something wrong here? It was working earlier. So let's say, yeah, this error is not very helpful.
Noah,
Yes.
line 2, is it imported incorrectly, the spelling of bootstrap table? The
No, I don't even know why I have that. I have bootstrap table. Ah, well, that shouldn't be there, but bootstrap table. Interesting, is because it was working when it was just the name and the. So it's working there. And then I add another table column and say data field equals description. Oh. No, table column, a table header column. Ugh. That was why. Price and varietal. All right. There it goes again. It says cannot read property is key of undefined. So we get some of these, and then so if I take out varietal here, All right, that's still broken. Take out price. Am I looking at these wrong? It's price and varietal. That's what that's called. All right. I don't want to worry too much about this because we've only got a limited amount of time after all. So I'm just going to, we found one combination of these that work. I don't know why adding other data fields is not working at the moment. I'm going to look into that some more. But in any case, we've got a table. It's automatically set up to render all of our wines using ID, name, description. I'll look into exactly why it's messing up that particular way later on. So, I don't know, maybe React Bootstrap may not be the best solution after all, based on what's been happening right now. Just pause for a bit for questions. Anyone have any questions about all of this?
Yeah, what's the difference between the browser router and the router?
Good question. So a lot of it has to do with history. You know, there's that history API that we use to navigate things by like props.history.push. Does that sound familiar? So router and browser router can both do that. I believe the difference is that browser router has history kind of built into it, while the regular router component you need to specify. If I can look that up, like router versus browser router. Yeah. So we can take a look here. This one probably explains it better. So browser router ignores the history prop as it handles the history automatically for you. If you need access to the history outside of a React component, then using router should be fine. So when you use a router, you need to do something like router history equals history. Browser router, you don't need to do that, but then you lose access to that history variable directly. So if at any point you want to make a method that directly manipulates the history of your components, then you'll want to use router. But if you're fine letting React handle it, use the browser router.
Noah, I had a quick question.
Mhm.
So, given that people can, access the React app, can they actually see, the fetch requests or like which URLs it's querying?
Good question. I believe they can. There's probably a way to specify that they don't. Tom, do you have any insight into that?
So just the question was, when I load my React app, is there a way I'm able to see the URL of the fetch like API?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you go to the network tab in the console, so in the Chrome DevTools, if you go to network, you can see, if you like refresh, you should be able to see. I think somewhere there should be like a network request that goes. Yeah, right there. If you click on that, you can see the request URL, and then if it has any headers, what the headers consist of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And then, so my next question was, given your React app, are people able to like reverse engineer it? I know, like with web pages, you could just go to like view source, but are they able to like decompile it with React apps?
I honestly don't know. I'm sure there's a way to do it.
And using React DevTools, they can see what your structure is. They can see all the names of all of your components. So that'll give them some insight into that. But I don't know if there's a way to like just go to sources and just see everything, because it's such a big React is so big. So we can get Wine's front end here, SRC. Oh yeah, it looks like they get access to all of it.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So it looks like they can actually see all of your components and things like that.
Yeah. So if we use like a compiler like Babel, that would more than likely prevent this from happening. So it just takes everything and converts your entire application into essentially like a single JS file. And then at that point, it's like you can't really see the sources, just like Noah is showing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thanks.
No problem. All right, cool.
Can you
In that
walk through
case,
cores one more time real quick?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Kenneth?
Yeah, can you walk through the cores API one more time real quick?
Sure. So when you want to access something like this API right here, it's got automatic, like by default, it has rules preventing any outside domain from using an API request to this. It'll send a request, it'll just block it entirely. So that policy is called cores, and that's something you can update manually to let in specific things or just let in anybody. In order to get around that for now, we're using this coresanywhere.herokuapp.com service. So when you go to my API page, you add coresanywhere.herokuapp.com / before your URL. That's essentially a little password allowing you into this particular Heroku app. It's not like it'll just let you into any API anywhere. But for things like, okay, I've got my personal Heroku app, Cores Anywhere will kind of act as a key to let me in until I can actually update my Django app and its cores policy to specifically allow this front-end application in.
Okay, got it.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to my wine page. So just like last time, I'm going to turn this one into a class-based component so we don't actually break everything. Great. And I'm going to import my wine API because I want to be able to have this one be able to fetch an individual wine component. It's going to set up state. Wine is going to be an empty object. I'm going to say component did mount. So I'm going to first need to get the ID of the wine we're on. I'm going to set that equal to this.props.match.params.wineID. Because remember, when we set up our router here, we said, all right, we created our route with wine ID being the wildcard here, saying we can put anything there. And so that gets passed down to this component in props as props.match.params, and params includes wine ID. So it'll get that from our URL, like right, oops. So /wine/1. Here's wine page. So in our props, we got history, location, and match. Match has params, and inside params, we have wine ID, which it gets from right here. Now that we have our ID, we can call on wine API.fetch wine by ID, passing in the ID there. Then we call on .then, with our JSON response. Then we'll this.setState. Wine is going to be set to JSON response. Let's take a look at, I'm going to take a look at the Heroku app here, except I did that wrong. Make sure to see how this is formatted. So we just get an object with the ID, name, price, and all of that. So if I reload this page, we should be able to see the wine in the state. There it is. The wine with the ID of 1. And now we're going to display it. I'm not going to waste time this time with the React stuff. It's up with the Bootstrap stuff. It appears to be a little finicky today. And honestly, I've had enough surprises for one lecture. So I'm just going to display this the old-fashioned way. Actually, before we do that, we can do something like so that way I can just go wine.name like so. You planning on breaking on me today? Nope. Great. Just gonna copy these two. And repeat. Name, price, price, varietal, varietal, description, description. There's wine number 1. Look at wine number 2, should be different. Get wine number 3. All right. Cool. All right. Any questions about all this rendering stuff? This is all making sense? All right, great. So the last thing we're going to be doing with this, actually, it's 9:53. So before we get into posting a new wine, let's take a break. Let's just take a 10-minute break. So be back here at 10:03, and we'll continue this. So I'm trying to stop the recording, and I can't find the. There we go.